Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with a tribute to a Christmas special from one of my most favorite incarnations of the Scooby-Doo franchise. I'm talking about A Scooby-Doo Christmas from What's New Scooby-Doo, which aired on the WB on December 13, 2002. This episode was directed by Scott Geralds, and it was written by John Collier, George Dotz IV, Jim Krieg, and Ed Charlak. Ever since I was about 10 or 11 years old, I loved What's New Scooby-Doo. It essentially recontextualized the formula found in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And transferred it into a 21st century context. What with Scooby-Doo and the gang using more high-tech gadgets, as well as heightening the personalities of the likes of Fred, Daphne, and Velma. This was not the only time where Scooby and his gang managed to receive an update on their personalities. The ones that spearheaded this change were the likes of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, and Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. And in terms of What's New Scooby-Doo, this was the incarnation that made me have a lot more fun with Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, Fred, Velma, and Daphne as a whole. In incarnations such as this, Fred has become a lot more goofy and a lot more vivacious in his approach, especially when he meets celebrities such as Melbourne O'Reilly, and he's also a lot more charismatic than the more tactful and military style Fred that I saw in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Daphne has also become less of a damsel in distress and is far more active in the group, and is also someone who is not afraid to speak her mind. Velma, though she maintains her smart girl attitude, is a whole lot more snarky in What's New Scooby-Doo. Whereas for Shaggy and Scooby-Doo, they're still their lovable, cowardly selves who love food and really enjoy running the heck away from each and every monster they encounter. I have yet to watch a whole lot more Scooby-Doo Mysteries Incorporated, as I've heard a lot of amazing things about this particular incarnation, and it's also one that, according to many a Scooby-Doo fan and even fan of great animation, was the Scooby-Doo incarnation that managed to blow the others out of the water, considering that it also had a very strong voice cast consisting of Matthew Lillard, who ended up replacing Casey Kasem as Shaggy, Frank Welker doing both Scooby-Doo and Fred, Greta Lyle voicing Daphne, and Mindy Cohn doing Velma. And I also found the references to the X-Files and Twin Peaks to be all the more interesting, especially the XP of H.P. Lovecraft, H.P. Haycraft. So there were definitely a lot of facets, attributes, and a whole lot of references I did miss out on Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated because at the time when I was a teenager, I was rather burned out with the whole Scooby-Doo mania. But ever since giving Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated a bit of a go, I think I have to owe it to myself to watch a whole lot more episodes. But for now, I still consider What's New Scooby-Doo to be one of my most favorite incarnations of Scooby-Doo of all time, thanks to the usage of high technology as well as a revamp of each of the members' personalities, and just how much fun it was able to have playing around with the usual formula of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And make it fit into a more 21st century style. And going to this particular Christmas special, I did remember enjoying it ever since I was quite young. And ever since coming back to this as an adult, I could still say that A Scooby-Doo Christmas has held up so well in not only the fun and enjoyment factors, but also the thrills that it had, as well as a deeper story surrounding the monster of the week. This episode starts off with Tommy and his friends trekking through the snow-blanketed woods and finding a snowman. One of his friends dares Tommy to pull that snowman's carrot nose, but It comes to life as it attacks Tommy and his friends. Meanwhile, Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, Velma, and Daphne have just arrived in Winter Hollow, New England. However, the condo they were about to go to had its roads being closed, so they ended up opting for an inn in which they meet a whole bunch of colorful characters, ranging from Jeb, the curmudgeon who believes that Winter Hollow is cursed thanks to the headless snowman, Sheriff Ellen Perkins, who believes that this whole curse of the headless snowman is nothing but an old wives' tale, and Asa Bucklaw, who is a successful proprietor whose business is booming thanks to the locals coming in for the night. They even encounter Professor William Fagin Higginson, who is very aware of what is going on throughout the town. It also helps that his specialty is the folklore surrounding Winter Hollow, as the origins of the headless snowman date back to 1823, when Seamus Fagin emigrated from Ireland to settle in America. However, he ended up being robbed by a bandit by the name of Blackjack Brodie. Since the day Seamus ended up being robbed, the townspeople formed a lynch mob to capture and execute Blackjack Brodie. What they found was a snowman, and inside said snowman was the frozen, soot-covered corpse of Blackjack Brodie. So the mystery behind the headless snowman definitely runs deep, not only within the town, but one of its denizens, especially considering that the headless snowman comes in when the rooms get very, very cold, and then he comes down from the fireplace to strike terror. This is up to Scooby-Doo and the gang to capture this villain in order for the town to feel at peace once again. In their pursuit, this also leads to one of my most favorite chase scenes, backed up by the song Santa Claus, Santa Claus, sung by Heavy Trevi, complete with the gags involving Shaggy, Scooby-Doo, Fred, Daphne, and Velma, in which Shaggy and Scooby-Doo trap the snowman and pour syrup on him as if though he was about to be snow cone. Fred, Daphne, and Velma even sing Christmas carols, with the snowman monster believing that, oh, they're just wonderful carolers, so they deserve some hot cocoa, and Shaggy and Scooby-Doo trapping the snowman until he ends up wreaking his vengeance once again, and his head being used as a hockey puck for Shaggy and Scooby to compete in hockey. But their plans of capturing him are all for naught, as Shaggy and Scooby land on thin ice, and once they thought that their lives were about to be over, they ended up being rescued by Fred, Daphne, and Velma, who end up lassoing the popsicle duo as Shaggy and Scooby end up going back to the inn to warm themselves up. Fred even finds out that the book published by Professor Higginson tells a lot of detailed explanations as to how Blackjack Brodie died and where the gold is, thus spurring Fred on to have Daphne and Velma help him set a trap for the snowman monster, while ensuring that Shaggy and Scooby don't need to worry any further, as they will just have to end up warming themselves up in the inn tonight. Cue the headless snowman to fill the room with a deadly cold, and for him to strike his terror once again, with Shaggy and Scooby running from him again, and Fred, Daphne, and Velma setting up the trap, which is a row of heaters. Fred's plan of having Shaggy and Scooby ending up as bait go accordingly, as Shaggy and Scooby end up arriving just in time for the snowman to get blasted with heat waves, thus making him cry, I'm melting, oh what a world, just like the Wicked Witch of the West. And it's then revealed that the snowman monster is at first a pod, but once Velma pushes the pod button, it's revealed to be none other than Professor Higginson. It's also revealed that Seamus Fagin was Professor Higginson's great-great-great-grandfather, and that he wanted to retrieve the treasure that was stolen from him by Blackjack Brody. Even Asa at first believed that Professor Higginson was a descendant of Blackjack Brody, but Velma corrects him by stating that Professor Higginson was in fact the descendant of Seamus Fagin and wanted to search for the gold in order to retrieve his family wealth. So he came up with this elaborate scheme in order to scare the locals away from each of their homes by using the snowman mythos to disguise himself as that said snowman, and even use complex technology in order to give the rooms their deadly cold in order for the snowman monster to come striking terror. And that's what he did. And because his costume was made out of snow, he also needed to make sure that each and every house that he was finding the gold would end up being frozen or refrigerated. At first, Professor Higginson was about to admit defeat, that all he found was nothing but bricks. But once Velma hears the Lexeme bricks, she starts to understand that all the houses that Professor Higginson, disguised as the Headless Snowman, was searching for were all made of bricks. And it turns out that Velma's hunch was right, as the bricks of one of the houses turn out to be gold bricks thanks to rubbing off whatever material covered that. Sure, there might be closure to the whole treasure hunt on Professor Higginson's end, but he still believes that he has done wrong and that he has done unethical deeds in order to warrant him to be hauled off to jail. And I definitely enjoyed the way he was able to state that, because unlike a lot of the grumbling, disgruntled, and defeated foiled villains of each of the Scooby-Doo episodes, Professor Higginson's motives were a lot more reasonable, and there was a plan in order for him to retrieve his family wealth. Sure, he knows fully well that the plan he concocted was not of a great moral standpoint, let alone benefited all the people of Winter Hollow, but what he attempted to do was retrieve what was rightfully his and his family's in order to uphold not only the family wealth, but his family's legacy. The townspeople now understand this, especially Tommy, who ends up forgiving Professor Higginson for scaring him, and with that act of compassion, Tommy ended up being fully aware that all Professor Higginson wanted was to fulfill his family legacy by retrieving the gold. And Tommy even gives Professor Higginson his scarf, thus showing a whole lot of compassion towards the man who felt like he lost everything about his family. And that was an extremely touching moment. Even Jeb, who started off as being curmudgeonly, also had his heart go out to Professor Higginson. And this also extends to Sheriff Perkins as well as Asa, as they believe that Professor Higginson definitely deserves the riches that Winter Hollow has to offer to him. Even though this whole treasure hunt has been put to rest and Professor Higginson ended up acquiring his now restored family wealth, he feels that he needs to extend it by giving that said wealth to the denizens of Winter Hollow as well as Scooby-Doo and his gang. And the episode ends with general rejoicing as the Christmas tree is lit up. Everyone manages to celebrate the holidays, especially with Merry Christmas Day sung by Julie Fordham and Jonathan Rice being sung in the background, and with Scooby-Doo bidding us, the viewers, goodbye and Merry Christmas with his usual Scooby-Dooby-Doo yell, which I thought was a very great way to end this particular Christmas episode. So it's no wonder why I enjoyed Scooby-Doo Christmas ever since I was a kid, and I still enjoy it to this day as a grown-up. The whole legend surrounding the Headless Snowman, as well as the motives Professor Higginson had for disguising himself as that monster, were all the more exciting, involving, and I also felt for Professor Higginson because this was a man who felt like he lost everything and thought that he was about to lose everything once again when his crimes were found out, and he thought that he was going to end up being hauled to jail. He knows that his actions were not right, and he knows that what he has done was unethical and morally wrong, especially towards the townsfolk of Winter Hollow. But as Shaggy stated, it's the season of forgiveness, and the gestures shown by the denizens of Winter Hollow towards Professor Higginson is all the more touching, and I definitely rooted for all of them because he managed to get closure to what was something that was taken away from him many, many centuries ago. And as I stated before, Professor Higginson was the best character in this particular Christmas episode because unlike the other 12 villains who were grumbling, complaining, and were absolutely disgruntled that their plans were being foiled and they could have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling kids, and even felt like they could have had it all, at least with Professor Higginson, he had a reason. His family wealth was tied to his family legacy, especially considering that Seamus Fagin, his distant ancestor, was robbed by a common bandit who wanted to make a name for himself by being terrifying to all the denizens of Winter Hollow. And even when he thought he was about to suffer a crushing defeat, he still managed to earn the forgiveness and the compassion of the townspeople because they also understood that yes, his ancestor was unjustly and unrightfully robbed from his wealth, and they managed to extend that understanding and compassion to Professor Higginson, and in return, Professor Higginson shares his wealth with the townspeople and the Scooby Gang. And speaking of Professor Higginson, I definitely have to give my hat off to Peter Scolari for doing such a fantastic job for voicing this otherwise villain of the week. And he made him not as this grumbling, defeated villain, but a man who felt that his wealth and his legacy was stolen from him by some bandit in the form of Blackjack Brody. You get the feeling that this was an intelligent educator who felt that his whole life was tied to his family roots, and he wanted to uphold those roots. And even though he knew what he did was unethical, let alone harmful, he was at least ready to face the consequences, and I believed every single word that he uttered. Therefore, Peter Scolari managed to make this otherwise typical villain of the week into someone who is human and someone who had reasonable, if not misguided, motives. And he definitely had me feeling for him, especially in the end. And I felt so happy for him when the townspeople forgave him, as well as ended up celebrating Christmas with the townspeople and Scooby and his friends. If you are a hardcore Scooby-Doo fan, you can never ever go wrong with a Scooby-Doo Christmas. It's a wonderful combination of thrills, laughs, and a lot of heart. And that's what this particular Christmas episode did for me. And I'm sure it will do the same thing for you. And for those of you who caught a Scooby-Doo Christmas from What's New Scooby-Doo, what'd you think of it? Did you really enjoy the chase scene between the headless snowman and the Scooby Gang? Did you really enjoy Professor Higginson as a character, especially when it was revealed that he was the man behind the headless snowman costume, as well as the break-ins, thus having a motive of why he did that? And did you really empathize with him? Or did you feel like this particular Christmas special was a waste of your time? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my tribute to a Scooby-Doo Christmas from What's New Scooby-Doo. Tune in much later for my tribute to It's a Wonderful Tiny Toons Christmas special from Tiny Toons Adventures. So until then, happy holidays, everybody!